Hello everybody, and welcome to our second interview with the Bionicle 2015 screenwriter, Merlin P. Mann. Gotta make that distinction. How's it going, Mr. Mann?
Awesome. For you Google guys out there, yeah, do make that distinction, or you'll end up with the wrong guy.
Also known as Merlin the Man.
Also known as Merlin the Man, yes. This is the truth. How's it going, Mr. Mann? It's been a while.
Well, I'm doing great. It just started snowing where I'm at, so, well, anything is better than sitting outside, that's for sure.
Oh, wow, lucky you.
Yeah, I know, right? I would kill for some snow. But I live in the
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Might be a little bit of a,
Snow means a lot to me,
man.
I
nice.
live in the southern U.S. You know how many times it snowed in my life? Twice.
Really?
Yes.
It snows just about every year for me.
So that's kind of cold-hearted.
So anyway, today
Okay.
we are going to be discussing the Bionicle 2015 animations once more, this time with a focus on the summer animations, as well as, obviously, the question will come up, some of the shake-ups behind the scenes, and some of the plans for next year that have been announced since our last talk with you.
I think it's there's a huge drama that went behind the scenes of Bionicle. Like something crazy happened,
Yeah, people killing for snow. I'll see what stories I can kind of slip you. But anyhow, first of all, I'm just going to have to excuse in advance if I start crying at one point, because I'm going to get very emotional. This, at least for now, is probably the last of my involvement as a creator in the Bionicle universe. And boy, I really hope I get the chance once again, because it's been, as I said before, a heck of a ride. And it's been so great to interact with the fan base, like the Bionicle fan base. So, well, you guys, if I get a little mushy at times, bear with me, okay?
Thank you for the warning. But, yeah, I have a couple things that I would like...
Very sad ourselves.
Yeah.
To see that, to hear that your involvement has come to an end. We really enjoyed having that interactive view and, hearing all this stuff.
You have good social media presence. You're active in the community because,
you.
Bionicle 2015.
Yeah, that's really much appreciated, because then it's like, oh wow, they actually are kind of listening to us.
Yeah, it's good to know that people read.
Definitely so. But I don't know. I truly believe that is a great part of the future of at least storytelling in large universes like the Bionicle universe. I mean, I think you have to be able to do that. And when you look at, for instance, stuff like Star Wars, the new Star Wars movie come out, you can see the way that they try to interact with their fans and the way they try to, communicate and let people be part of it. It's just such a central part of what storytelling is today. And you guys truly got it. So I hope there's going to be other people taking over, being able to communicate with you, because I know this is something that actually pairs so well with the whole Lego virtue, which obviously is interaction and creativity. So I mean, when you tell stories from a Lego perspective, obviously you want to tell a story, goes without saying, but what you really want to do is you want to inspire the users to create their own stories. That's the whole point of Lego, that you give them something that they can actually rebuild in any way they want, and this goes to the stories as well. So I think that social media presence is extremely important to the way we interact nowadays.
Okay. That's a really nice way to look at it.
It definitely is. Social media is very important. Before we get fully started with this interview, there are a couple things that I would like to say as a disclaimer of sorts. Namely that for this interview, we posted a topic on the TTV Message Boards at board.ttvpodcast.com asking for some fan-submitted questions. And we got a very good turnout. We got about 40 replies of some questions, and obviously we cannot ask them all within the constraints of this particular interview. However, we have gone through and filtered through them and figured out some that may be interesting, but also keep in mind that as the conversation flows naturally in our interview, we may ask some questions that other people coincidentally asked. Just rest assured, we're not trying to rip you off. It's just like we're going to ask the fan questions later on in the show after we have had our talk. So if some stuff gets repeated and you don't end up getting your question asked, don't be offended, please.
Great minds think alike. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you guys said their questions, it's just because there was such a good question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, quite honestly, that's about it. We can go ahead and kick things off. So, I think a good place to start would be, because the last time we interviewed you was in May, and at that point, the first season of the Bionicle 2015 animations had wrapped up, and I don't think we had heard anything about Season 2. I think it was all speculation. We hadn't even seen the trailer for it yet. And the book definitely
That's true.
had not
That's
come
true.
out.
I think everything. No.
So I think a good thing to start
I actually don't remember when they start getting leaked, start getting posted, but yeah, it was a while after that actually.
All right. Well, I think a good place to start off with would be now that Season 2 and basically the entirety of the Bionicle 2015 animations has come to a close. What would you say was your favorite moment, or like? Yeah, I'll say the favorite moment that you wrote for in the story. What was like that standout moment to you in Bionicle 2015 that was like, this is cool. I'm glad that I'm involved with this.
Well, obviously there were a lot, and obviously for me personally, it was the interaction with the story team and with the animators, and that whole work process was just one great thing. But if we look at the story and the story points where I really felt that I could get into it was. I'd probably have to say right about the end. I mean, the final episode, the final battle, the face-up with Coulter, because that was where I could sort of fully translate the idea of what working together had meant. Not just working together, but actually being willing to sacrifice each other or sacrifice oneself for each other. And I think that whole idea of being willing to make a sacrifice is what defines a hero. So to me that was actually the first moment where they got to truly show themselves as heroes. So I think that's probably my favorite moment.
It was definitely a pretty impactful moment as far as like character motivations and story points notwithstanding. It was a very impactful moment in the series because of how it was translated visually. In the animation specifically, they conveyed that sense of desperation very well.
Yeah, they definitely conveyed that impact when Cult's staff knocked all the toe around like bowling ball pins.
Oh yeah,
that was a great moment. I love that.
And it was at that moment that you realized that Coulter was the real deal.
Yeah, he was no loss, that's for sure. But that's cool.
Wow. So, real quick, I've been confused about that for the longest time, and now I just got reminded of it. Is Coulter his official name?
It's actually, the name is in the story Bible, so the name has been there all along. I'm not sure why it didn't really show up in other media, and we weren't supposed. I don't think we were actually given any directions other than using the other names that they had, Skullgrinder and Skullbasher and stuff like that. And Coulter, well, the name was there, but it just never was used, which was kind of odd. But then again, none of the other characters really had names at that point, apart from the Toa. So I don't know. I figured there was sort of probably a way of keeping things simple, and I at least assumed that these names would then pop up in other media, because with the animations we just had to be very, very simple about how much information we gave out, because we didn't want to confuse things more than they could be already. But Coulter is, as far as I know, at least an official name.
Well, thank you very much. That's really, really good to get confirmation on, because the reason why there was confusion is because Coulter, it showed up in a Lego Club magazine, and that's the only place we've ever seen it, and it was not actually used in the book that came out, Island of Lost Masks. However, the Protectors got names in that book as a result of Ryder Windham. So there was confusion about whether Coulter
the Protector names
or not.
Yeah, and I have to admit it, because at that point I had actually already been out of the loop, so to speak, because we'd already finished our part of the work. So I thought that Coulter was going to show up in the books, so I was a bit surprised about that. On the other hand, the names, the Protectors, were names that the writer there made up. So that was actually his invention.
Yep. This is true.
Yeah. Did you ever?
conducted an
You
interview.
didn't ever talk to writer Winham, did you?
No, I didn't. I mean, I knew from you guys when it was that. It was,
wow.
obviously.
Amazing.
So no, I didn't have any direct interaction with him as a writer, but obviously, or that it turned out to be that he, of course, based his books directly from the scripts that we had made, which was only natural because I guess he had interaction with the story team, so that made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, another thing I'm curious about, and you probably don't have any knowledge of this specifically, but obviously Kulta had a name from the start, pretty much in the story Bible. The Protectors did not, and I assume the rest of the Skull Villains did not either, or else we would have seen those in other media. And now we've gotten the set announcements for next year, and they've shown up in Lego Club magazines, and we know that they've gone back to giving names to a large majority of the characters, both in terms of the set promotion and also in story. They're not that weird split where they would have the set names with generic titles, and then in the story they get actual names. And I was mainly curious if you had any insight into the behind-the-scenes process of that decision. Did they take a look at feedback and think, well, we're cool to put names back on the products and begin advertising them as such again because people won't get confused? Or is this their plan from word go, to have the first year with these titles and then slowly reintroduce the concept of named characters back in?
I don't know. I have to be honest. I don't know. The story Bible didn't initially hold a lot of these things, and I think that was probably had a lot to do with the fact that they wanted to keep it as open as possibly, because they knew there was going to be a lot of new story writers that were going to come in and work with this, and I think that actually worked very well, and has to be said to their advantage that they didn't try to tie everything down. They knew that creative people were going to come in and work within this framework, so really the story Bible consisted a lot of about guidelines, and of course a lot of background information, especially to the place and the story arc and stuff like that. But there was a lot of room for guys like me and for the story team to play within, which I think was great advantage. If there was a decision made that said, let's go with names, I'm not sure, but I'm quite sure that they have listened to the response and the reactions. They've been very, they've had a lot of focus on that. So I'm quite sure that they've sort of seen, well, what kind of response do we get to these things? And it seems like, well, people really want names, and obviously this is something we want to give them.
Yeah. Because, like, for me,
I have to say it's speculation on my part, but I'm quite sure that it has had some sort of effect.
Yeah, it's definitely a positive trend that I've noticed ever since the inception of the theme's revival. They're moving more.
As we talked about the first time round, I think the idea was not to start it off too heavy. Not that it, as we talked about it as well, not in order to dumb it down, but sort of start it off in a way where everyone could join in, so to speak, and then see what kind of reactions would be to the theme and to the storyline and stuff like that. And I think the one main reaction that was there was more. And I mean, no one could really, even though some fans might have been disappointed and thought, oh, why did we only get this? As long as the fans are screaming for more, I mean, then you're actually on the right way. And I think that expanding the platform that we tell the story on, expanding what kind of detail can be given from the universe, I mean, all of that is moving in the right direction as far as I see it.
Yeah, we're definitely kind of in that same opinion as well. The theme has a very good progression. I'm seeing it. It's really interesting to see it grow and mature, because now, of course, we obviously know that they have the Netflix show next year, The Journey to One, and that's kind of the biggest topic of discussion amongst us. It has been for the last couple of months. Has been, well, what does this mean for the future of the theme and the increased budget and all that? It's very interesting. Okay, does anybody else want to ask anything?
I think there's no. Yeah. I'm sorry, we're just rambling on here. But the only thing I would say is that I think that I don't think that the animations were ever really supposed to do what the next Netflix show can do. I think this was again. I used that expression before. Sort of testing the waters and also just sort of getting the TOA back in line and seeing are they still viable? Is there still a market for it? And there most clearly is. But the true story platform, of course, has to be something greater. And I think the Netflix platform is probably a very good chance of actually telling the story and actually communicating the story.
Okay.
So
I will ask one more thing, and then I'll shut up for a minute and let some of the others ask some questions. But I have to do this one because you just brought it up. Do you have this knowledge of whether the Netflix show was planned from the start or not as something that they wanted to do?
At least I didn't know about it. But it could. I assume that these things are something that they talk about over a longer period of time. Okay. But the job that I was commissioned for, and that that Advance, the agency that did the animations, they were commissioned for, was solely the online webisodes, the online animations. So the whole Netflix show or the Netflix series was actually another commission, so to speak. They were sort of a project on their own. So I'm obviously the Lego parts or the Lego members of the story team are working together with whoever is making the Netflix show. And I have to admit that I don't remember who that is. But it is a brand new setup.
Fair enough.
All right. It seemed to me like that was the case because, it looked like it was the promotional imagery for it at least conveyed like a different studio and a different style than anything Lego's really done before, and especially with like Netflix, I don't know how original content with them works because it's such a new thing. The only original content I've really seen from Netflix so far has been like an actual live action stuff, and obviously they're not going to do a live action Bionicle thing.
What are you talking about? That'd be amazing. Live action Bionicle. It has
just a bunch of people running in TOA costumes, cardboard masks.
Man. They'll cast me in a heartbeat.
Or the old concept of where a human kid stumbles into the Bionicle universe and becomes like,
oh no,
the greatest hero ever.
The seventh TOA. Oh. Yeah.
Oh man.
So can I ask you something about the timetable? Like how, when were the animation, like season 1 and season 2, how did they, when were they like being worked on in terms of like in relation to what we got, and like how early were you working on the animations and the scripts next?
Well, work had obviously been underway for quite some time, and the Bible was made out before that. But I got hooked on the project in, I think, sometime in the spring of 2014. So it was actually fairly short notice before they had to be finished. So, but again, I was pulled in very specifically as a screenwriter. So really, I had to, transform the storylines that were there into, actual screenplays. So that means that probably a lot of work had gone underway before that. But I think this. I think the first season took about 3 months to do from my part, from when I started working on it, and probably around the same with the second. So. All in all, over a period of 6 months, with a little time in between the two.
Okay.
Wow.
And where do you know? Like when would you say you were like basically finished with the scripts? Would it be like in 2014 or?
Well, actually, I could instead of just guessing, I could just go and look at my files here. I think the first version, the first draft of the winter season or the winter half was May 2014, and I was finished with that in about August 2014. And then the summer wave, I started that probably about around winter time. So that's probably about December. We started really churning out drafts and finished about March. Of 2015. So I think the last time I wrote anything on here was like March 2015.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a while. Oh my god.
Yeah. We were talking about how
I miss it so much. It was really fun.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, I know. Writing for like Bionicle and writing for a screenplay must be.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
honestly,
great experience. So
it was awesome. I'm really, those were the days.
Yeah. Were there any, like, you spoke specifically about Lego listing the feedback and getting back to you. Were there any instances with that when you were writing, like, I guess season 1 when you wrote that Bionicle hadn't been announced, but after it was announced and while you're writing season 2, the summer wave, was there anything Lego came to you and you're like, hey, fans really latch onto this, or they really like this, and maybe include some of that?
Well, not really in relationship to Lego as such, but within the story group. I mean, we talked about that all the time. It was part of the conversation. So when we talk about it, say, I think they really want and how about this, and maybe this could work and stuff like that. So that was very much in relation to, which also made a big difference from this from the winter wave to the summer wave, was that as we were working on the summer wave, we were already having some sort of feedback on the winter wave, which was amazing. And it's always like that. You go back and you think, oh man, if we knew what we know now. And I would say having this response and seeing the power of the Bionicle community. I mean, you want to start over again and try to make it even better this time around.
Right.
But again, I feel that's I truly hope that, and I have no reason to doubt that this is an experience that they won't bring into the next Netflix show. So I'm quite sure that a lot of the discussions that we've had on the story team will somehow translate into what is going to go on screen there.
Right.
All right, let's see who's going to ask next question.
Aldo, you got anything to ask?
Oh,
I'm
boy.
pretty silent.
Yeah, for once, you're, like, super quiet.
Yeah.
For once.
I've just been thinking up moments where I can jump in, say some lame pun, and then get shunned.
That is what you typically do.
All right, had there ever been a point during production where you wanted to really, really do something or put in some sort of a reference or a comment that some character made, or even just focus on a character more, but to a certain degree, that would end up conflicting with whatever the story team had thought up? Was there ever an instance like that?
No, not really. I mean, the only real constraint was time. And the only real constraint was that we had to keep the stories within these 90-second limits. And especially also the fact that we were not, we weren't really sure how people were going to be watching these. And we were, because obviously the true fans would just, watch them from one end to the other. But we had to, in a way, be ready that people, could see these in strange, random orders and just see glimpses of it. And then the whole point is that the kind of story that we had to tell, obviously we had to tell, the story arc and sort of the fundamental story of Bionicle. But also, as I mentioned before, Lego's mission is also to start stories of their own. I mean, that their users start them on their own, so that whoever builds with Legos or plays with Legos start making their own stories. So that means that we have to inspire storytelling on the part of the users and of the fans as well, which means that if, for instance, you thought like very young, the young part of the audience, that they would be in some part inspired by this 90-second clip or whatever that they saw, without necessarily being interested in following the entire story. You still had to have some sort of point or action or showing part of what the toy can do within these 90-second slots. So it was a lot of things that we wanted to do at the same time, other than simply telling the story, and which was of course a great challenge and a fun challenge for a guy like me, who's very used to just working within a 3-act structure and having very clear character arcs and whatever. I mean, the one thing that you have to understand working with the story for a company like Lego is that obviously the toy comes before the story. Obviously, and the play and the interaction comes before the story, which to an idiosyncratic storyteller like myself can be quite annoying at times, because no, I want to control everything. But that's not the point of Lego. The point of Lego is that yes, you can inspire and you can show how some things can be, but you also have to make it so open and so inspiring that people will take it and do whatever they want to do with it. These were the constraints or challenges or opportunities, if you will.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. That makes perfect sense. And for a long time, we've understood that toy has to come before the story, and the story kind of enhances several aspects of the experience that Lego's provided.
Lego sells sets, not stories, was always the mantra of a certain group of people after Bionicle got canceled. People were saying that,
Now, to bounce off of that real briefly, speaking of the story, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding certain imagery within the animation, specifically the old Generation 1 Mask of Time.
Oh boy. Controversy. Yeah, there's riots in the streets, protests going all over.
Riots in the forums.
The Mask of Time is not real.
So, all those being there, did you have any input into that kind of thing and some of the other references that kind of sprinkled throughout? Or was that kind of an animator deal that they put it in there?
I have to admit that was outside my reach, unfortunately. There's a lot of that I would have wanted to take credit for, but no, that other people can take credit for that, especially the animators. I think that was a very clear choice, though, from Lego's side and from the story team side, that whenever it felt right and whenever we wanted to play with that, I mean, we could bring in and bounce off of the things that made sense to us. So, I mean, I got a few things through there, but the really important stuff that they put in there was primarily from the animators.
Fair enough.
All right, there we go. That answers that. All right.
Yep.
Kahi, Ven, either you two?
Well, I have a question, but I think if Ben has one, you can go before I do, because I've already talked.
I'm still thinking about how to phrase my question, so you can go for it.
Okay. Well, this one's a bit more of a. It's something I kind of mentioned on Twitter jokingly, but man, there was that lever though, right?
Oh, here we go.
Kopaku sure knows how to push Pahu's levers.
Okay. It's just us here now, right? I mean, no one else listening in.
No, nobody else.
No one else. This is a completely
if you have
private
any
conversation.
listeners, they're part of it. So in all, in all fairness, I have to admit that was a bit of a mistake that the lever didn't make it into there. It was, but I think I retconned the whole thing, because he does hit a button. That's right, but the button underneath it hits a lever. You just can't see it.
Okay.
Wow.
So the button pushes the lever underneath it.
That's right.
No, it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Absolutely perfect.
That's incredible.
Man. It was a funny episode. Do you know?
That was good. So some of the references too.
I loved writing that. That was a fun episode to write.
Here's a real important hard-hitting question.
It was actually rewritten quite a few. It were rewritten quite a few times. Because we were just getting overly ambitious when we started writing it, and the animators were like, "Yeah, well, chill. You can't put all of what you wanted to put in there. That's not possible." So, but
we don't
I
have
still
that
think
Weaver technology available right now.
That's right.
Well, here's a real important hard-hitting question. So the Toa fall down a pit after the fight with Skull Slicer, and they get stuck in rocks. But Skull Slicer also falls down a pit. So what became of him?
Yeah, what became of him? Well, he was actually and this was the part that we wanted to communicate more clearly. There's a reason it's called flush, and that is that you're flushed out of the stadium, which you can also see on the markings and the carvings on the wall there. So actually, he's flushed out into, the whole city seems to be there. It's not floating, but it's a top,
it's like
sort
a bottomless
kind of
pit.
pillar. Yeah, exactly.
Really?
So he gets flushed out into the bottomless pit in a way. So he doesn't go the same way that that the Toa go when they crash into the ground.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's actually,
Really?
but you can't. I can understand if you're a bit confused about that, because you can't really tell that from the animations. But really, that is what it is. That you get flushed out by water. Actually, you get flushed out of the big holes that are in the side of the arena.
So what? They just float down
Wow.
to the bottom wherever that is, and they're just exiled forever. Or like, what happened?
Oh my!
Oh,
Yeah,
he
you-
stopped laughing. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's for another story. But
Fair enough.
they were, they were hard fellas back then. I'm telling you. I mean, this was thousands of years ago, and they
Play around.
they didn't pull punches.
Hammer Flush is serious
Yeah,
business.
no. That was like you get a gold, like you either get the gold medal or you get exiled. That's how it goes.
That sounds
Hammer Flush is
depressing.
very competitive.
Like, they must have been
Borderline
really
Hunger
serious.
Games stuff here.
Yeah. Well, I gotta take it back to Skull Slicer for a second, because you mentioned that Kulta's name was in the story Bible, and there was also a much smaller bit of controversy about Skull Slicer, because we got some details on him also from the Sam Lego Club magazine that is the only place to this day that has used the name Kulta, and it stated that Skull Slicer was controlled by loss, and I was wondering if that was ever part of the story Bible, or if the actual thing, like people assumed before that, is that he was just another one of Kulta's servants.
I mean, I have to admit that at this point I don't really remember.
Fair enough.
If I don't think I ever saw a reference that talked about Skull Slicer being controlled by loss, which would really make no sense in the way that we wrote it. The way we wrote it and the way we told the story was that obviously he was part of this undead army that was controlled by Kulta. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it. But there was one thing though, that was he was sort of he was at least thought up to be sort of previously he had been one of these masters of Hammer Flush, and he was sort of a resurrection of that. So that means that he was also sort of a jester, joker like type. So he wasn't really taking a lot of orders. He was more just spinning his own game really.
Oh wow.
And well, a lot of that again we didn't have time to communicate all of that backstory.
Yeah, right.
But he was a very fun character, and he was a character that you could have gotten. I mean, if you actually had a TV show or whatever, you could have.
We got a whole episode about him.
Told a lot of
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The main thing, the point of contention, obviously, about the Lost thing is a common theory was that the person that wrote that article on the Lego Club magazine may have just seen that he was wearing a Skull Spider mask and made that one-to-one connection and just put that into the magazine.
Plot twist.
Again, I'm not sure, but I don't remember seeing it in the Bible at any point talk about Skull Slicer being controlled by loss.
That's kind of what we presumed.
The progress. Yeah, in the progress of the story, it wouldn't make sense, but obviously he could have been at one point, and that could be explained then why he's more of a loose cannon on the deck now, because he's not being controlled any longer. I don't know.
Fair point, actually. What if he was a slave of loss and then he got killed and then he got reanimated, so his mind is just like scrambled completely.
Scrambled to the point where he just feels like acting like a jerk for the sake of being a jerk.
Yeah, just he takes off his mask and he laughs and he hops around. That's his evil plan.
Well, if your line of work was part of being either winning or being exiled, I mean, you'd probably get pretty whack as well.
Yeah, you'd probably be really good at the end of that.
Yeah.
Same with the gladiators. I mean, they were probably pretty messed up too.
Oh yeah.
You know, that was the Lego Club magazine, right?
Yeah, it was.
Who do we know that edits or manages the Lego Club magazine?
Maybe we should take this to the Lego Message Boards. Ask Greg Farsty.
Man.
Greg Farsty back for his revenge.
Yeah, spreading misinformation in the Lego Club magazine.
Hey, that's our job.
Oh man.
I do have a question.
Okay.
And I wanna. I think I know how to articulate this now. What was the most challenging episode to communicate your ideas into? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if we look at the summer wave, I think probably after the Hammerflash sequence and when they go underground, we actually had we wanted that to be a place in the story where, you know, where things got a bit more creepy and a bit slower, a bit more, you know, eerie. Mm-hmm. So we had planned a sequence that was the Toa wandering underground in a tunnel system. That's also why they pop up in the graveyard later on. And we had you know, quite a sequence there where we sort of wanted to give a chance for the Toa to sort of form more character bonds and you know, bounce off of each other, and also to communicate sort of the more anxiety and the thrill of the thing.
Right.
And obviously it turned out that we just did not have the time to do all of what we wanted. And also we had other constraints that we ended up making more really of a recap episode, or at least that they started thinking about their own role and what they were actually doing here. Up until then, they had pretty much just followed the leads ahead of them, and they never got to stop and question what they were actually doing. And that was what that sequence there was supposed to do. But the way we wrote it initially would have taken up at least 2 episodes, and we had to cram it into 1 episode.
Right.
Oh, that's unfortunate, because that sounds really awesome.
Yeah. Were there any ever moments? I think that's like the parts that fans would find the most like fascinating would be like stuff you really wanted to put into animations and you just couldn't because of time, or like stuff you wanted to flesh out, you know, like with Hammerflash, some behind the scenes, deleted scenes, that kind of thing. Is there any ever moments you can think of kind of like that?
Well, I mean, obviously we would have thought it fun to expand on Hammerflash and on Skull Slash and stuff like that. But I think again that this is also one of the very obvious places where everybody else can sort of pitch in. I mean, this is where you can sort of say, oh, you find this. We'll just give you a glimpse and a hint of a character. If you find this interesting, I mean, go for it. You know, tell the story. Play the scenes, and I think Skull Slicer especially would be perfect for, you know, small close scenarios for fans and for kids as well to play out. So sometimes you also have to leave some of the goodies to the audience instead of eating it all up yourself. But other than that, I mean, we actually did write a longer Skull Basher fight, which was fun. It was really fun, and I have to say this, that it was also a bit repetitive that to have a huge boss battle just before the hugest boss battle. So in the end, it didn't really make sense that we had that whole thing going there. So that was cut also for, you know, in order to meet the time limits that we had. But I also think that from a story perspective, you don't want to have a big battle just before a big battle. I mean, it wouldn't make sense. So I think all in all, it was probably good. But it was a fun battle.
Mm-hmm. That's actually
that sounds
very
interesting because I'm kind of imagining it working both ways. The way that you guys were originally planning it, and then the way that it turned out now. Like, say the Toa actually do get into this fight with Skull Basher, and it's a long battle or whatever. It's a little drawn out, but then they beat him, and now they have the confidence. Oh yeah, we beat that guy. Took a little bit of effort, but we got him. We can totally get Skull Grinder. Then they go up to Skull Grinder with this confidence, and then just get smacked in the face.
Right.
Exactly, and I think you really hit the hammer on the nail there, because that's what we wanted them to approach Coulter with this, or Skull Grinder, with this enormous confidence that they really they knew the code now. Now they know what they had to do. And again, we had played a lot on the whole working together theme, and the final point was really, you have to work together, but you also have to be willing to sacrifice, so that they. The whole point was that you can't just work together for selfish reasons. You have to work together for a higher purpose, and that was sort of on a thematic level, the point that we were trying to make.
All right, cool.
I have to make a comment on the Skull villains, and again, it's something that's probably a pointless question because you probably do not have the answers that I seek, but I have to try. In the story, both in the animation and in the book, Ekimu is written as having known about Skull Grinder and Skull Basher, at least in some capacity. In the book, he specifically mentions they call him Skull Grinder and they call him Skull Basher. And that's always perturbed me because I have to wonder if Skull Basher...
Who's they?
Who, first of all, who is they? And second of all, do you know if perhaps the Skull villains existed in some capacity before Ekimu went into his endless sleep/coma?
No, well, the whole point is that when he's in his coma, he's still able to. I mean, he's in sort of a. His body is in a state of in sort of a coma-like state, but his mind is still active, which means that he is able to specifically through certain masks communicate and listening in. So he's actually this is not specifically underlined or specifically told in the animations, but this was very much what the whole him speaking to the Toa through their masks thing was about, was that his mind was actually alive and had been alive all along. So he's seen the progress of things, even though he's been in this comatose state.
Okay.
But he wouldn't know everything, because he would only know, he would have sort of, it had the right mask would have to be there for him to sort of being able to listen or see what happened. So he is sort of I don't know. He's sort of like the internet, but he needs the consoles around to actually be
so does
in
this
contact
psychic
with
link only work through masks that he himself has made, or is it like any mask?
No, not necessarily masks he has made, but I guess that the mask would have to have. I don't know, because it's not like he can communicate with any mask. He can't communicate with normal villagers or the Okoto's mask. It would have to be special power masks of
because
sorts.
I had a thought that if he could if he could see through Makuta's mask of control, then perhaps he would see Makuta naming his creatures, his servants, like giving them titles.
in my headcanon, like,
Say that's a very fair observation. Yes, I cannot comment on that though, because that's further in the story.
Exactly.
I feel like Makuta named all of the creatures that he revitalized, Skull Basher, Skull Slicer, all of it. But he named them such terrible names because he doesn't have the mass of creation. And he can't think of any good names. That's why he wants the mass of creation. So he can give him better names.
Boom! There we go.
I like that.
The mass of creation, the reason he wants it is so he can write better fan fiction.
Right, he's like, alright, well, Skull Grinder? You have grinding things, right? Yeah.
Skull Basher, you bash things. Yeah.
Beware his stinger tail of a Skull Scorpio.
Beware the stinger tail, by the way.
Which, by the way, yeah, that was really great.
Great choice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. I had to put that in.
Of all the references you could have possibly made, I love that one made it in.
Did you see the the source material and in terms of the movies and stuff? Did you watch that before you started writing, or
it wasn't in the Bionicle movies?
Yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Beware My Stinger Tail was actually a blurb on the 2009 website.
Yeah, it was when they were advertising the Glatorian.
All the Glatorian had their own quotes, and Vorox had "Beware my stinger tail," which was ironic because he never spoke in the story once, and the Vorox's species. You never saw him.
I have to admit, I don't even know when I picked up on that. It was just, some of these things just get, it's like memes or whatever. They just get their life. And it was just something that we joked about a lot at the story team. We talked about the stinger tails, and it was like, really? I'm sorry, we have to put them in. We have to put them in.
Amazing.
And I snuck them in.
Well, that makes sense. I know it's a TV trope. That's the name of a trope. It's one of the few tropes named after Bionicle.
Bionicle was the reason that trope was named that.
Yeah, exactly. It was named after that trope. Was Beware My Stinger Tail.
Of all the things, Vorox.
Of all the things, yeah, the Vorox.
Well, that and the Master of Air joke were the best references.
Yeah.
Oh, that was funny.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, but thank you. I'm very happy about that. I actually had to fight a bit for that. Not because it was. It was just more that it didn't really fit in. I had written sort of a setup for him to come out with that joke that fit in one way of the episode going. Then we changed a lot of things in the episode, and these things just weren't happening. So it was like, okay, how can I get it back in? I need this reference.
It's very important. Well,
that's awesome.
So,
I'm glad it got in. It was a very funny moment. Well, let me think here.
I got one.
Go for it.
So, writing the first half of these animations, Tahu was the focus. The second half, we were introduced to the Toa as a team, as a group. Out of all the Toa that you wrote, which one was your favorite, and which one did you have the hardest time writing?
That's actually a difficult question, because when you go in and out of the characters and stuff like that, at one point you hate all of them, and at one point you love all of them. Looking back, I would probably say that the one that I find most underdeveloped is Gali, and I would really want to go back and try and give her more. And it was a lot of it. Sometimes it's also coincidence, because you start off with an episode and you have a lot of great ideas for what every character is going to do. Then you look at it and you say, okay, we can't have everybody doing everything, so we're going to have to start cutting things. And things are often cut to what fits the best to each other. And I wrote several scenes or sequences where Gali really got to, do her thing. But then in the end, they ended up just not fitting in. So I was a bit, I don't know. I wanted to do more work on her. I think Hohato probably ended up being the one that was easier to write. Not him or Kopaka. Kopaka got pretty easy to write as well, because they just sort of they got into a character that was just, you just knew this character so well that you knew what he was going to say next. So that was probably the easier part to write.
Okay. And would you say you have a favorite character or Toa out of the group?
No, that'd be hard. I mean, I guess the cliche here would be to start talking about them as your children, and you couldn't really choose between them. And as actually being a father of many children, I know that sometimes there are some children that really piss you off, no matter what. So, and other times, you love them all. So that's it'll always be like that. But I don't know. I think Pahato actually probably was the one that surprised me the most. I didn't really know in the beginning how what type of character he would turn into, and he just, I don't know, it just every time it just seemed like, well, he fits in very well being this way. So I don't know, he was fun.
Nice. Okay.
Did you know he was going to have an Australian accent when you wrote him, or was that something that was improvised and you're like, oh wow?
No, I had nothing to do with the voice acting or the choices made there, the direction of the voices.
Or so, the whole Batman thing.
But I mean,
crikey, mate,
obviously it was because the boomerang weapons that he had obviously lends himself to a sort of an Australian theme. So I guess that was pretty obvious. But there were no notes in the scripts about him.
Fair enough.
Speaking Australian.
Putting shrimp on the barbie.
Yeah, all curious.
Crikey, mate. Beware the stinger tail, mate.
That's not a tail. This is a tail.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy ride. The year of 2015.
Yep. And thankfully, we can all agree out of that ride.
No, don't even say it. Don't even say it. Lewa is not the best.
You really want to bring this here? Now,
absolutely. We've had
in
this
front of Merlin Mann.
Yeah, well, he'd be able to clarify.
Do you want to get into another half-hour-long debate about like whether Lewa killed or knocked down the Skull Warriors?
Okay, that is actually something I would like to ask. So in the animations, Lewa, at the beginning of Season 2, Lewa, he swoops in, bam, knocks all Skull Warriors down into the ground, and allegedly that's the beginning and the end of it. And he comes back down, he slams down on 2. When you wrote that, did you intend for him to single-handedly take out that whole row of Skull villains, or they got dropped down and then the rest of the Toa kind of mopped them up?
Ridiculously pointless question.
No, I think this is a very important question, and I'm really happy you brought it up, because it's been, I've really been looking forward to. Now, he's supposed to kill off all the archers. He's going to swoop all the archers. There are other skull warriors on the ground that the others sort of have to take care of, but he's the one that gets all the archers.
So meso.
Ryder Wyndham disagrees with you.
Yeah, well, Merlin P. Mann agrees with me.
Yeah.
I haven't read the books yet, so he actually has a different opinion.
Or you could just listen to our show called Book Club
oh my
on Vessel.com/the TTV channel.
My goodness.
Shameless plug. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, but I just figured that I had to read the books before I heard the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Or is it possible to hear the podcast without having read the books?
I mean, kind of summarize it for the viewers, but I don't know if that's how you want to receive it.
You're pretty well attuned to the source material, I would think. Yeah. It's like the book just takes some
honestly,
liberties.
Yeah, the book is basically the script for the animations.
9 times out of 10, yes, it's a direct transcript in the second half of the book.
Actually, a lot of your dialogue is directly used in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've heard. That's kind of funny. Which, I mean, I'm happy about that. I mean, obviously, if you've written something and someone thinks that it communicates what's needed, then that's cool. But again, I'll have to say that I mean, it was written for the very specific medium that we had at hand, which was the 90-second webisodes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this dialogue was not really wouldn't really fit into a literary context.
That's kind of what we
said. Yeah, like they worked well for the animations, and I think they got everything across very well. But when you're reading it in a book, it's a little.
It feels like there were plenty of times where you're not limited by like a time constraint. Here, you could have gone more in depth into the situation.
It's very fast.
Well, I have to admit again, I haven't read the books, and I'm really sorry I haven't read them. I am going to read them. I think that's probably one of the great places of telling story. Obviously, I mean, I write books as well. I'm a novel writer as well.
Yeah,
and I love that medium. obviously the story that you tell in 90-second webisodes has to be much more visual, has to be much more action-oriented. I really hope they keep doing the books, and they're going to do graphic novels as well, right?
Yep.
When are they coming out?
They're actually coming out 29th of December.
Yeah, the next
the
book,
two.
book number 2 and graphic novel 1 are on the 29th of December.
Good. Because, I mean, again, it's about telling the story, yes, but it's also about inspiring people out there. And you can inspire them on so many levels. And I'm really happy that Lego is trying to play on different platforms, because it's not just getting the story out there, it's getting the universe out there, it's getting the world out there, and inspiring people to work or play within this world.
That is really the end goal of Lego. Like you mentioned, the stories are a framework, they're an example. They're like one possible scenario. So.
Yes, and then also, I mean, I've had people ask me how I react to the fact that people, that others, especially online, obviously, that fans have been critical and have, a lot of other theories and a lot of other stories that they want to tell, and how do I react to that, and how does that make me feel? It makes me feel great. I really have to admit, whenever I read people that have given so much thought, I mean, boy, I should have checked on that before this interview, because, but you can probably find it. But there's a video on YouTube, some guy who's going through all that all the things that he thought was done wrong in Bionicle 2015. I think it's like an 8-10 minute video, and he says a lot of really great, intelligent things about storytelling in general. And he starts coming up with his own stories and stuff like that. He really creates something. And even though obviously I could see that as a criticism of the work I've done, I have to say I see this as a tribute to the creativity that Lego inspires. That you just feel like there's so much you can do with this. There's so much you can do within this world. There's no one right answer. There's just limitless possibilities. So I think the more people who start doing their own versions, the more people who do fan fiction, the more people who play within this world, the better.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That's a really good way to look at it. It's like your thing really means a lot when people are already thinking about how it could be better or something like that. Really analyzing it, taking that sort of time.
Yeah, and of course I have to say, some people are idiots too.
Oh man, yeah.
We're no strangers to
this. But specifically in the Bionicle fan base, and I mean, you guys know this. There are always some troll that want to say one thing or another, and they're not really they're not into the story for real. They just want to make problems or whatever. But the dedicated fans, and you can tell so easily, the ones that they really feel wholeheartedly about it, and they have good or bad points, or they may have terrible suggestions to what you could do with the story, but you can tell that they put thought into it, they put heart into it, I mean that's what it's all about.
Very true. Very, very true. Okay.
Meso, unless there's anything else, do we want to get into a few fan questions?
That's what I was about to say. I was like, if you guys have anything else.
Good.
No, I got nothing else. So
alrighty.
No, cool. Let's do it.
In that case, we have got a pretty good assortment here